Hello, everyone. We've been collecting your hometown haunt story submissions over the course of the last few months, and tonight we are reading them to you. Thank you to everyone who submitted stories, so let's dig into these wonderfully spooky stories from around the world. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hometown Haunts podcast brought to you by the Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities Comics Anthology. You can follow us on social media at Cin Cabinet Curio, and no, that's on Twitter and at Cincy Cabinet of Curiosities on Instagram. By the way, I'm Kat Clogo, and we haven't done this recording in a while. It's kind of obvious. Tonight with me, we have Jen Kohler and Christina Wald. They'll be here, not in the shadows like usual. We are chatting all about the ghost stories and spooky goings on from your neck of the woods that all of you wonderful people have sent to us. So, just a reminder, we're dying to hear from you about your personal encounters with the paranormal and fringe history from your neck of the woods. Send it to hometownhauntedmail@gmail.com or join and share it on our Facebook group, Hometown Haunts. We're an official podcast that can be heard wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to see us while we're doing the show, like the flubs that I just made, you can watch the video on YouTube. Find us by searching Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities. Please rate and review us there so other spooky histories just like yourself can find us. Link in the show notes. And we do read the YouTube comments and other comments sent to us and reviews. It's wonderful. There's actually one tonight on the show, I believe. Just one. Let's improve that. So, show notes or show news. Christina's Kickstarter. It was a success. It is done now, but it's wonderful. Christina, come on and tell us about how it went.
I was really excited. Made our first stretch goal, which is a little guide to using color on, because I made these little tiny palettes, which I'll have to show a picture of. Well, when I say made, I kind of designed, but Troy figured out how to make them with his 3D printers and that sort
That
of
is
thing.
so cool.
Yeah. So we're going to be, a lot of people were saying, well, what colors do you put in a 6-color palette? And the reason we came up with this was because when you go to a lot of museums now, especially considering like a lot of the stuff that's been happening lately, they don't let you bring your person anymore.
Right.
But like a little palette like this, you can bring in because it's really tiny. So it fits
Mhm.
in usually what they'll allow you to take. But it's really exciting. And now I'm on the editorial phase and we will be going to press in January. I have a lot of choices of printers. And that's one thing that's interesting with a Kickstarter is you suddenly have an email every day from a different printer saying, I saw your,
Yes.
could I print your book?
Yeah.
And I said, well, send me a quote and I'll see. I mean, it's pretty exciting. Now's the hard phase, like the fulfillment and doing all the stuff and doing the online store and all that kind of stuff's the difficult.
Yeah.
Well, it's all difficult. Is there any part that's not difficult?
No, every
Okay, I didn't
part
think
of it
so.
is different. There's a different hurdle every time, and it's all just different aspects of difficulty. So,
Yeah. So, but I'm relieved it's over. I'm glad I had it over before Thanksgiving because it would have been really awful to be at my
oh, yeah.
relative's house thinking about it. But
Mhm.
really excited all the people that supported. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we were traveling for Thanksgiving. So for those of you listeners who are listening in the future, we're recording this literally right after Thanksgiving. Great timing on us. And we traveled hundreds of miles between
Really
just the
did.
two of us. Like other parts of the United States. And I went through 5 different states to get to my final destination. You went through what, 3?
We went through. I don't think we went through any of Maryland at all. We thought we might, but I think we went Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, New Jersey, then New York. So 5 for us too.
Okay, yeah. And I got Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, and then the great state of Oklahoma. So, yeah, got 5 as well.
Do you go
Just
through Arkansas at all to get
nope.
to? Okay, I wasn't sure.
We go through the Ozarks, but we do them in Missouri instead. We actually
Hmm.
passed 2 wildfires.
Wow.
One of them was super spooky at night. They were and we could not find how they started or if they were controlled, but the first one that we went through was just outside Rolla, Missouri. And I remember looking out the window and it looked like magma just up a hillside. And
Oh,
then all
wow.
the smoke hit our car and we're like, "Yay. Okay, that's what that is." And then same wildfire coming back and then there was an additional one just outside of Springfield. So, there were 5 wildfires going on when we were coming home because we had to
My
map and
goodness.
everything. Made it interesting and very smoky, and Mike wanted barbecue.
Wow. So it was in the Ozarks is where these wildfires
Yeah.
were, or oh my
Yep.
goodness.
Yep. They were in the Mark Twain Forest, the
Mhm.
state forest. So, yeah,
How
that was interesting. Hmm?
how was the Mississippi River? Did you see it?
We did. We drove over it to, when we passed St. Louis,
Uh-huh.
and, it was lower than it had been before,
Yeah.
and there was even the large river in Tulsa. Forgive me, people in Tulsa. I don't know which river that is, but it was super low.
Oh
Like,
wow.
it was easily 50% lower than it had.
Wow.
You could definitely tell where the rest of it was supposed to be,
Yeah.
and on previous trips, we knew that the, river was supposed to be higher. And it was so sad because I'm like, wow, there's not been enough water to or rain or
Yeah.
snowfall to fill up this river this time of year.
Yeah.
So, and man, everything usually is much, there's a lot more foliage and
Mhm.
there wasn't much.
Oh
There was
wow.
some parts of Oklahoma that clearly had wildfires recently, and we could
Oh.
see the scarring from that. So,
Almost like Dust Bowl all over again.
yeah, let's not do that. I don't
No.
need a part
No.
two of the
No.
Dust Bowl, but yeah, it's always interesting driving through. It's fun going through the Ozarks, and then earlier in October, I went to Baltimore to visit my friend, and we were driving through the hollers that we had our friend on a
Oh,
few
nice.
episodes ago. That suddenly I can't remember his name, but we
Mark.
actually, yeah, Mark and
Mark
his
Muncy.
wife.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a fantastic episode. If you haven't listened to it, go do so.
Mhm.
But we actually passed a lot of the locations that he talked about during the show, and I'm sitting there telling Mike about them in the car because it's a 10-hour drive to Baltimore from Cincinnati,
Mhm.
and it was fun, and it definitely can see how those monsters can live in the woods and the hollers and valleys of the
Mhm.
Allegheny
Mhm.
Mountain area. So,
Oh,
also shout out to Baltimore, you're all awesome.
Mhm.
So,
that is a cool place. We're having dueling cats here. Me and
yeah.
Jen. We're dueling cat ladies.
Yeah.
So I have a cat that just jumped up here too, and I think
You
he's
want to
about to.
see something cool that I got? This is going to make
But
great radio. So, I got some cool stuff when I went to Baltimore.
oh, neat.
I got a centipede and a
Oh
Ew.
snail.
wow, I love those centipedes. Those are
No.
so fun to draw.
And
No.
then, Jen, you're just going to really love this. I got a tarantula in
Oh, I've
acrylic,
seen those. Yeah. Those are cool.
That's
in
cool.
addition to the beaver skull that is now in my curiosities shelf.
I think you need to. Are you starting like a curiosities shelf?
Oh,
That's
yes.
very cool.
Yes, I have a bunch of cicadas from last year's brood
Mm.
that I have prepped and they're ready to be pinned. And then I also
Mhm.
have a butterfly that I need to identify first, but I found it freshly dead in my backyard, so I prepped it for pinning
Mhm.
and it's ready to go too. So
How do you do that? Print it.
slowly.
Yeah, prep them. Yeah.
So, um, wow. Okay. So basically, what I do, especially with the bugs, is you
Mhm.
want to find them as freshly dead as possible. And then you want to put them and dry them out in a dry place. So above your refrigerator in most homes is the perfect place where they're not going to get disturbed.
Mm.
And then for cicadas, I may have dried them with their wings closed. So unfortunately, when I pin them, I probably won't force their wings open. If I wanted to, when prepping them for pinning, like what I did with the butterfly, I take an ornament box and I
Mhm.
put
Mhm.
rubber bands. I put the butterfly like gently into the ornament box, spread its wings, and then I put rubber bands over it to force the wings open as it dries.
Mm.
And I should have done that with my cicadas, but I did not.
Yeah.
So they're just going to be bopping there. al
A couple,
natural without
Yeah.
their wings spread. But I collected all of them and I'm quite
Yeah.
proud. So
Yeah.
yeah, you want to make sure they're all mummified, and that's how they keep better. And then you put them in a UV uh, protectant box, and
Mm-hmm.
you want to make sure that they always are out of the light,
Mm.
natural
Okay.
sunlight, or they'll just continue to rot.
Disintegrate. Yeah.
Yeah,
there was
eventually
a
they will, but hopefully we can make that a few decades instead of years.
Yeah.
the group in Cincinnati of medical illustrators did a really neat workshop a couple years ago, which I signed up for and unfortunately had to cancel at the last minute due to deadlines. But there was somebody around town that was teaching taxidermy, and they did
Mhm.
uh, taxidermy on like a big beetle, I think it
Yeah.
Mhm.
was. And it looked like a really great workshop. It would be interesting. Maybe we could have one. I don't know if that person's still in town that teaches taxidermy, and then you can also sketch from the specimens, but that might be a
Mhm.
fun outing to do with the fans of Cincinnati Captain of Curiosities
That'd be
that like
very
to
fun.
draw.
Yeah, and I know Hale Records in
Hmm.
Covington also has taxidermies. It is also an oddities shop. So,
Okay, I can see the finished product, but I don't want to learn how to do it.
oh, it's really interesting. But yeah, these acrylic pieces are from Bazaar in Baltimore, which is a
Nice.
really cool
Nicely
oddity
done,
shop.
too.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, they're really nice. I love all the articulation and everything. The spider kind of throws me off because it's if you look at it at the right way, it doesn't look like it's an acrylic, and I'm like, "Oh, look at that large spider."
Yeah.
And then I'm like, "Oh yeah, I need to name it." But
For
anyway,
Somebody wants to be on the podcast today. He feels
well,
that he should be part of it today.
Yeah,
is that
Clover
Thundar?
is staring at me like she's about to jump on me, but
They're like, isn't this the special cat episode?
yeah.
Yeah. So
Apparently so.
I will say for viewers of the YouTube channel, if my door randomly opens, it is not a ghost. It is one of my 3 dogs. So,
Unless it's the ghost dog.
it could be the ghost dog, but he tends to melt in and out of things according
Mm.
to little guy. So,
Okay.
Oh,
not creepy at all.
that's
Not at
really
all.
interesting that he still sees him a lot.
Yeah, he'll see them occasionally and go, "Wheatley's there. Wheatley just melted into the bathtub," or "Wheatley's there. Wheatley
Oh
just
wow.
melted into the toilet." And I'm like,
Do you
"Maybe
just
pass through? Is that what you're looking for?" But
do you discuss any of this with Sai?
I
Like,
do
does he
not. If
know that you
he
can
comes
see
out
things?
with it on his own and
Okay.
we just roll with it, we don't tell him he's wrong or anything.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
we're just like, okay, well, where's Wheatley now? Or Wheatley's on the bed. Wheatley's in
Mhm.
the hallway. Wheatley's on the
Mhm.
staircase. So
No.
yeah, yeah. So
Which takes us to our topic today.
yeah, we got listener
Speaking of
emails.
melting,
Yeah, speaking of melting, we got listener emails and actually one physical letter. And I got a Thanksgiving ghost story that maybe it's a few days too late, but we can always enjoy it next year. Um, so I'm really happy, everyone. We have so many wonderful stories sent to us by our awesome listeners. So without further ado, shall I tell a ghost story first? Or
yes,
should I?
please do.
Yes, I will. I'll tell the ghost story first. So this is a rather recent ghost story. It only happened 5 years ago. So for me, that's recent, I guess. Um, my mom used to live in northern Indiana, and it was the last Thanksgiving we actually had at the house that I grew up in. And for listeners who don't know, my father passed away a number of years ago, and he pops in and out from time to time. And this is one of those times. So it was my in laws, myself, my husband, my mother, and my mother invited one of her friends who is elderly to join us. And she didn't have any, we'll call her Dolores, and Dolores had no family locally. So she was spending Thanksgiving with us. And at the time, Dolores was something like 87 years old. So we were wheeling her around the house and everything. And my mom and I had made this large Thanksgiving feast as one does, which you have the turkey and the stuffing and the pies and all the great things that go along with it. And we're sitting down to eat. Now, I am facing, if you can imagine the orientation of this dining room, it is a circular table, and I am facing the hallway door that goes into the front um, foyer of the house where the front door is, and my back is to the kitchen. Generally, so I can get up and down because I'm the youngest out of everyone there. So if anybody needed anything, I was the one that had to go get it. So I am looking at my mother-in-law, whose back is to this door to the foyer. And we're eating dinner, making small chat, like, how's your day? How's the weather? Oh, it's Indiana. It's always weird. Blah blah blah. Stuff like that. And my mother-in-law, I noticed that the candelabra that had been lit, there was actually two small ones of three candles each on the table. And we started noticing that for whatever reason, their flames went from your standard maybe a half an inch to an inch over the wick to being like 3 inches high. And Deb also has seen ghosts and has had quite a lot of paranormal stuff happen in her life. And we're looking at that and we're like, that's strange. Why? And she's also a scientist, by the way. So her seeing strange things and saying that's strange, that's something to pay attention to. So we're just like, that's strange. Why is the candle doing that? And we were talking about my mom was reminiscing on the last Thanksgiving my dad was around. And we're like, oh, that's really nice. And these candles, the flames kept raising higher and higher. And we're like, that is really weird. And then they eventually lowered back down. And the topic continued on my dad and about how he liked fishing and all that stuff, that and all the activities he used to do during Thanksgiving and the smoking of the turkeys. And I remember looking up and my mother-in-law was sitting next to my mother and standing in between them was my dad. Just as a full-bodied apparition. He had been dead 7 years at this point, and I'm like, "Oh, well, look who's come to join us." He was wearing a white button-down shirt, as he would when he would be working, and khaki pants with the pleats like you would see from any businessman in the 1990s. Everything was white or golden on him, which was interesting because he never wore gold jewelry too often. And he just stood there kind of nodding in improvement over Thanksgiving dinner. And with that, he was gone, and the candles resumed their normal burning. And that was strange. The thing is that talking to Deb, she got a cold spot on her left shoulder where he would have been standing at the same time. And for our listeners, ghosts in traditional, I'm going to say British Ghost Society fashion, were known to cause candles flames to flicker up if they were present. It's a really old school way of ghost hunting from back in the 1840s, when around the Ghost Society, or even 1860s when the Ghost Society was formed. So it was interesting that we watched this phenomenon happen and then had a personal experience immediately afterwards. So that made it the most memorable Thanksgiving we've ever had. My dad has never shown up to another one. That was it. And he rarely ever makes full-bodied apparition visits since then. But that was a strange one, and at least I have somebody else to go, yeah, that happened, because I was there too and witnessed the same phenomena.
Did you say that was your last Thanksgiving at your house?
Yeah, that was the last Thanksgiving at
Do you think that
our
had
house.
something to do with it?
It could have. Yeah, it could have. And yeah, it's just that's where he died. So
Oh.
yeah, it is not in that room, but yeah, it meant a lot to him, and he knew Dolores for a really long time as well. So it was interesting that it was 7 years after his death that he decided to show up. But
Yeah.
yeah, but it's still to this day something that Deb and I will go, hey, you remember the time we saw Dave, like that. So yeah,
Wow, that's crazy.
that was not a ghost, that was my coffee mug.
Well, I mean, and that kind of segues, some of these stories of people showing up kind of segues into what we have for the comments. But do you want to do the fan letters first?
Yeah, we got a fan letter and a sticker to
Mm.
boot, and I love it. So I met Tom at this year's Cartoon Crossroads Columbus, which was in Columbus, Ohio, and he picked up a copy of the Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities comics anthology. So thank you, Tom, and your family. So he writes, Dear Miss Cloco, So, so glad to have met you at CXE Expo this past weekend. The kids and I love your work and what the other Curiosity creators are doing. As promised, I have enclosed a sticker of the hideous Chillicothe Skyfoogle. Yours, Tom P. So, yeah,
Let's see
and
the sticker again.
the sticker
Fugel.
Foogle, the Chillicothe Skyfoogle.
He looks like one of those crabs that what are those called? The crabs in the Japanese sea that have look like samurai warriors.
Oh, the Heike faces. I don't know what the crabs are called, but I know that the giant
I
battle
think
that
they are
happened was
called
the
Heike
Heike.
crabs,
Yeah,
aren't they?
I don't know.
It
But
was
I
on
just
Cosmos.
yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, the Battle of Heike happened in that bay, and we actually did a story about that a number of episodes ago called Earless Hoichi, which also talks about the ghosts of the Heike War and the Heike clan. But anyway, yeah, that's what it is. It kind of does look like a flying crab, and I love it. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, he's cool.
Nice.
I have a few other stickers from of cryptids from around the Midwest, like the Neon Rouge of Detroit, which is a little red Bigfoot, and then also our Bessie, the Lake Erie serpent. So
Neat.
yeah. So we have also listener stories and comments. These are comments from YouTube first. Okay, so these are listener comments from YouTube. So the first one is from Harpens Blues. I love people's names. And they write, super cool doing local haunts up at 8 p.m. on a Friday night after napping all day, thinking of doing some ghost hunting. Super cool. I ran across y'all. Greetings from Butler County. So
Aw.
thank you, Harpen.
Yeah, keep listening.
Yes, keep listening and submit stories from Butler County. Like, I know of a few, but I would always like to know more. So, and then Dan K writes to us from from Hometown Haunts. I've yeah. I've been catching up on episodes and listening to episode 50 today. I used to work at a place that had an atomic clock next to the machine I worked at. One day I looked up at to check the time and it was spinning around really quickly. I asked someone else if they saw it and they told me it does that on occasion. Turns out they use some kind of signal and GPS to keep the time accurate, and occasionally it will recalibrate themselves to the correct time, but spinning one full rotation. I just wanted to message and say that there's a logical explanation for that one. Enjoying the show and the background info on the city I've grown up and lived in for nearly 38 years. It's cool hearing lots of new stuff and I never heard of about before, so close to home. I've been to Waverly and Mansfield Reformatory, but didn't see anything spooky at all, unfortunately. So I'm always looking for something I can't easily explain away. So thank you.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks,
that's really
Dan
cool.
K. Yeah.
And so we've got lots of great stories.
Yes, we do. So, you want me to read Robin H?
Yeah. Thanks, Robin, for the story too. And she had told me when she was working on this that she's so glad she wrote it down because she said that writing it down helped her remember everything about it too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I've been on a personal quest to write down all the weird experiences I've had ghost hunting, just so that when I'm older, I can go, yeah, this is a story as I remembered it when I was in my 30s. So
Aren't you even making a zine about some of your
I
experiences?
am. I do. I made my first ghost hunt, or sorry, no, my ghost words, cat. Oh, I'm so full of pumpkin pie, I can't remember how to speak. Anyway, yes, I made a zine. It's 9 pages long about my first ghost experience when I was a kid, and I like it. I think it's really well done. So, yeah, maybe I'll put it on my shop someday so people can pick it up. So, this is The Pig Coin and the Thinning Veil by Robin H. To preface this story, I need to introduce you to my parents, Fred and Shirley Duncan. Mom and Daddy met when they were 15 and 16 years old. They married in 1950 and celebrated their 70th wedding anniversary in 2020. Yay, them! My parents both worked for the city of Danville, Virginia for 35 years each. Mom is a teacher and Daddy is a policeman. Daddy retired in 1987 and Mom in 1988. When people started referring to policemen as pigs, Daddy started collecting them. We gifted him pigs, friends gave him pigs. He even wore a little pig tie tag with his uniform. We had lots of pigs, all sizes and made out of lots of different materials: wood, clay, pewter, crystal, even one carved from a chunk of coal. My husband, Andy, was transferred to Ohio in 2009, so we left my home state of Virginia and moved to Waynesville, Ohio. Being an only child, this was difficult for me and my parents. Daddy suffered a massive heart attack, the Widowmaker, on January 10th, 2013, and was a code blue. He was resuscitated, but the oxygen deprivation led to a diagnosis later that year of vascular dementia. The diagnosis led to their move to Ohio to be closer to me. Mom endured many hospitalizations for internal bleeding from 2014 to her death. In 2019, Mom and Daddy moved into independent living at Oberden's senior living community. In March 2020, Mom had two back-to-back hospitalizations, which led to decisions to place Daddy in memory care at Oberden. He did well and visited several times per week and called daily. He never forgot our names, and especially Mom's. Every time I'll call, the conversation would start like this: "Hi, Daddy. Hello there. Where's Shirley?" They would talk, and all would be right with the world. True love defined my parents' relationship and life together. Daddy's health began to decline early November 2021. One day, when we were visiting, the nurse said he'd been seen talking to a girl in the corner of his room. I asked what the girl's name was. She replied, Lily. I told her that Lily was his beloved dog who passed away March 2020 at the age of 15. So the veil was thinning. Daddy passed away on November 24th, 2021 at the age of 93, was cremated, returned to his home in Danville, Virginia, and was buried December 11th, 2021. April 2022, Mom started with a low hemoglobin, indicating another internal bleed. A normal hemoglobin for a female is roughly between 12 to 15 grams per deciliter. She was taken to ER with a hemoglobin of 6.8 in the early hours of April 25th. After several units of blood and a procedure where they thought they had fixed the issue, she was discharged to rehab at Oberden. On May 3rd, Mom was once again transported to the ER, but this time with an even lower hemoglobin, 4.9 grams per deciliter. With Mom settled in her room, I left the hospital through the ER exit about 3:30 a.m. in the morning of May 4th. I had to cross the parking lot, and as I had parked near the ambulance bay, I was walking along when I spied something directly in my path, not to the left and not to the right, directly in my path. I picked it up thinking it was a quarter or a half dollar. Turned out it was a pig coin. Yes, you heard that correctly. A pig coin, a pewter pig coin with the front half of a pig silhouette on one side and the back half of the silhouette on the flip side. At 3:30 a.m. in the middle of a deserted parking lot, my father, a pig collector, had been dead 5 months, and there's now a pig coin directly in my path. I broke out in goosebumps. Every hair on my body stood at attention. I could hardly believe what I was seeing. There was no worldly explanation for this pig coin. Daddy was letting me know that he was worried about his beloved Shirley. I stood there and teared up. I looked up at the sky and said out loud, I'm with her, Daddy. I've got her. On May 13th, after 7 units of blood and with a hemoglobin of 8.1, Mom was discharged to a hospice room at Oberden. We had decided that we were fighting a losing battle. While Daddy was mentally challenged towards the end of his life, Mom was physically so. Her mind was sharp as a tack, but her body had taken a toll. In the next few days, she wrote cards, fine-tuned her obituary and a memorial service, sent emails, made phone calls, etc. On May 16th, I spent my day with my mom. I knitted with her while she alternately dozed, looking at Facebook and watched the DIY blog she loved on her iPad. I was fascinated watching and listening to her. Her facial expressions ran the gamut: happy, sad, laughing, grimacing, etc. It was like she was having a party. I heard her say, Lily, Lily, sugar, come on and go outside. I heard her say the word Alzheimer and wondered if she was talking to Daddy or to someone about him. She awakened herself several times during talking. I asked her with whom she was talking, and she'd tell me. One time, it was Alan Wilmison, a friend back home who she had not seen since her move to Virginia from Virginia to Ohio to go to get to see. Sorry, I lost my place. One time it was with Ann Williamson, a friend back home who she had not seen since her move from Virginia to Ohio in 2013. I asked her what she said to her. Mom said she told Anne that she was so sorry she didn't get to see her before she passed. Anne had died about 6 weeks prior. The next time, Mom said she was talking with Mary Lou Richardson, who had borrowed her wedding veil back in the day when they moved to Greensboro, North Carolina, and they had lost touch. She said, I wonder if she's still living. I was thinking, probably not. The veil was thinning. My mother died on May 17th, 2022, at the age of 92. She was cremated, returned to her hometown of Danville, Virginia, and buried beside her true love and eternal protector, Fred. Her memorial service was held June 11th, 2022, exactly 6 months after Daddy's. In all my years as a registered nurse, I have never experienced what I did with my parents. I was there when they both took their last breaths, witnessing of the thinning of the veil between this world and the afterlife was both freaky and fascinating. It was oddly comforting. I carry the pig coin in my wallet wherever I go, on all and all I can hope is that Lily met both mom and daddy and they are finally together again. A true love story that continues just on the other side. Oh, that's such a
Oh,
sweet story. I am so sorry that both of your parents have passed away, Robin. That is very hard to be a part of that entire process. I speak from personal experience. Um, yeah, it does seem like the veil is thinning there, and I'm glad your dad was able to send you something to comfort you from the other side.
isn't that kind of happen a lot? People get a coin or something like that. I've heard several stories like that.
Yeah, there's that's a really, I'm gonna say, ancient, just a port, which is an item that suddenly appears before you from the spirit world. They're called ports. And then you can get coins like the pig coin, pennies, dimes, nickels, um, and any currency that is from your local part of the world will pop up. And some people have actually made like graphs of how close the person who's sending you the apport is, depending on the money being sent to you. I think that's a little bit of a stretch, but it's just ways of telling you that they're around. Another type of apport would be animals, seeing doves or crows, things like that. I just say anything that is important to your relationship with the one who's passing away, if it's suddenly there in a very obviously wasn't there before fashion, like this pig coin, that's most likely an apport. Um, in in the case with some family members, when somebody was passing away, their favorite animal was a cardinal, and suddenly there were cardinals everywhere, but it was also fall in Ohio, and there's cardinals everywhere. So I'm not sitting there going, no, that wasn't it, but it's just kind of like that was nature. But I'm not going to tell the person who is experiencing it that they're wrong. They're going to interpret that however they want to, and they're free to do so. But I like this pig coin. That is amazing.
That's pretty specific.
Yeah, it's
It's
very that's
very.
where I feel like it's a very a true apport when it's just boom right there in your path.
She said that some hospice nurses had told her that when people start talking to children, that's often a sign that they're going to die in the next week or two. I don't know what that
Really.
means, but you've probably heard of that sort of phenomenon.
Yeah, not necessarily just children, just anybody who's passed on. Yeah, this I've heard that reported by several different nurses, both hospice and I don't want to say standard care, like ER nurses and stuff.
Hmm.
But yeah, that is the veil could be thinning definitely. Um,
Like they
or
see relatives, or who could the children be? Like they just start talking to people.
it could be they just are talking to people. It depends.
Hmm.
Um, it's just kind of the one time that a lot of people start seeing ghosts as frequently as I do. Um, to joke about it. That wasn't a great joke. Sorry. Um, no, it's um, it could be whomever's just around and able to pop in and hopefully give comfort. I think that's
Hmm.
largely why it's supposed like it's happening is to give comfort. And I like the idea of Lily Pup coming in to usher both of them across the Rainbow Bridge, basically. That's
Hmm.
I'm a big believer, and I know we've talked about that in our with
Animal episodes, yeah.
the animal episodes, that your pets will come back and help cross you over, hopefully.
Hmm.
So I would not be surprised if all of our pets were there waiting for us at the pearly gates when we cross
Hmm.
over.
That's cool.
Yeah,
It's really cool.
I love it, and yeah, I'm sure my dad will be there in his khaki pants too.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of parents visiting, and
Yes,
that kind of segues into the next one, which I think we're going to have Jen read.
yeah.
Yeah. And just
And
a
this is from B.
quick note, my mom didn't do any of that when she
Hmm.
passed,
Yeah,
which is, I don't know, it's interesting.
I do have a
Anyway,
ghost story that kind of ties into that first before
Oh,
we
yeah,
dig
I'd love
okay,
into
to hear
good.
B's.
it.
Yeah, I'm. This is just Cat tells ghost stories every the episode.
I
Just
like
lots of
Cat
ghost
Tells
I
stories.
Ghost
like those
Stories.
stories.
So this happened in 2016 Halloween night. So I was with my previous radio show, The Paranormal View, and we were doing a live episode from a house on the battlefield of Antietam. I can't remember the name of the house, but it's the Museum for Triage that's in Antietam now. It's a medical museum. And we were actually in the barn. And I did see a lot of ghosts and there was a lot of activity, but this particular story connects to Robin's. So at the time, I knew my grandmother was rather ill, but didn't think she was near death yet. And we were in the barn, which normally people don't get to go into too often, especially in the middle of early fall. And of course, there were docents around. And suddenly, we're there was another psychic, and I were seeing Civil War soldiers, of course, in the barn being triaged, and it was just a bunch of young guys. And then suddenly, there was a self illuminating orb outside, and we're like, "Hey, well, it's one of those slatted barns. You can see the moon from it." And we're just like, "Oh, it's the moon. It has to be the moon. It's so bright." It was a bright, brilliant white. So we're kind of not rushing outside to go see what it is. But as we're standing there, the sphere, the orb, floats into the barn instead of being outside of it. And the docents are like, I don't see anything, but myself and the other psychic and another member of our party were able to see it and kind of feel like a change of pressure basically in the room, and it disappeared. Well, I come back to take a break, grab some coffee. It was around like 10 p.m. at that time, and there's a message from my uncle that my grandmother had just passed away. So we think that, and when I say we, it's the other psychic and myself, think that it was my grandmother who came to visit at the time of her passing to see, to just kindly finally say goodbye. And she just showed up as a white glowing orb in the middle of a barn because that's where I was.
Wow.
And because the the orb didn't feel like the same kind of energy. It wasn't like old energy from the Civil War. This felt very different. And we think that it was my grandmother. We suspect. So that can happen too. And apparitions showing up at like deathbed apparitions, very common, very well known, and talked about ghost phenomena that happens all across the world and has since humans have been around. So, all right, now on to B's story.
Okay, this is from B. Okay, many years ago, I was a wee little girl living with my great grandparents. Downstairs, there was this large furnace vent, and beside it was my grandmother's rocking chair. It was a winter's night near Christmas as the tree was up in the front sitting room. Anyway, in the middle of the night, I heard the rocker rocking. It was a characteristic squeak. I climbed out of my bed and went to go see if Grandma was up and about. It was my responsibility to get Mom upstairs if Gram was up. I came through the foyer to the sitting room and looked over to Graham's rocker. It was rocking, and there, sitting in it, was my great great grandmother. She smiled at me and beckoned me over to sit on her lap. I did. She sang to me in the Shawnee language a song and tune I'd never heard before, but can still remember to this day. The next thing I knew, it was morning and my daddy was waking me up to make breakfast. That is just one of many such encounters I've had with various family members over the years. After my near fatal accident in 1996, my daddy sat on the end of my bed for the entire time I was in the hospital. He talked to me and I back. When the nurse told mom about it, mom told her to leave me alone and that my daddy was there. The most frequent visitor is my first husband. He appears on the roadside when there's danger ahead. Weird, but true. When I see him, I know to slow down and watch out. Many a time, that reaction has given me a heads up, and I have been able to avoid an accident. We also used to have a gentleman. I believe his spirit was attached to a hutch and table we were given for our wedding. He was silent. He would appear in the kitchen, make as if cooking and carrying a plate to the table. He would sit down, eat, return his dishes to the kitchen, and disappear. This happened every day, same time, until the table and hutch finally retired to the dump. Odd, my mom and my granny also saw him too. My hubby never did, though. Probably good to note that in my culture, such events are considered sacred and are meant to teach you something or to impart wisdom to you from your elders. Wow.
Ooh, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Thank you, B.
I have often felt like I have never seen my dad, but I often felt like after he died, he was watching over me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that'd be cool though if I could see him on the side of the road and say, "Hey,
It's
watch
kind of
what you're
shocking.
doing."
It's kind
Yeah,
of shocking,
I think that
but
might drive me off the road.
yeah, unless unless you're mentally prepared for it, it could be a little shocking.
That's true. That's
So
true.
yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to I'm going to add my own little story. This is a really quick thing. I'm sorry. I just so B, you've got your former husband that will pop up while you're driving to warn you. I've got one particular 1990s pop song that never really charted that will pop up on radio to warn me when stuff is about to happen. I am
Oh,
not
wow.
mentioning what song this is, but every single time I hear it, I know to be leery of my surroundings to avoid
Ooh.
danger. And so I love how the spirit world chooses different ways to communicate to people.
Well,
But definitely, yeah, these are all profound experiences. Take something from them. They're all learning experiences.
how did you pick up on it?
I ignored it, and the
Uh-huh.
first few times disaster happened.
Okay.
Wow.
So, and this is a particular song that generally does not get played because it was not popular and it annoyed, like, it has always annoyed me.
Mm-hmm.
So when I hear it, it pops out even more.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's
yeah, and
interesting.
yeah,
Who
and that particular band that I know of is not making any new music. So,
who do you think
yeah,
sends it?
yeah. So I like it. The spirit will make itself known to you in
Mhm.
ways that are recognizable and shocking enough to let you know to pay attention. And
Who
it's
do you
different for every single person.
who do you think sends it to you?
It could be whomever's watching over you. So, like, your dad could send you
Mhm.
messages. They could send you reports, just like the coin from earlier.
Mhm.
People believe guardian angels or guardian spirits will do it.
Mhm.
If you're somebody who's into Akashic records, it could be your elders that are teaching you from the other side. I do believe in spirit guides, so I kind of chalk it up to them. They tend to know things. They're just ahead of time, not future, not super future. Can't give me the lottery numbers or tell me where the money is buried, but they can tell you to avoid turning left and turn right instead, type of things. They
Well,
don't want you joining them that quickly.
Yeah.
There's an interesting distinction too in these appearances, because the one with the man fixing dinner and
Mhm.
eating every day, that almost feels like a recording. Like we've just discussed different types of things, and
Yeah, that's like a
sometimes it's
residual
almost like
haunting.
a residual, like a if you imagine a tape recorder or
Mhm.
something, recorded it, and it doesn't seem that actually kind of seems like a kind of a physics plausibility in a way.
Yep. Yeah, it's really interesting when that happens. He could have been tied to the hutch and the dining items that were eventually tossed.
Hmm.
But,
It's almost
yeah,
like Star Wars with Princess Leia. It's like
yeah,
beaming.
kinda like that. It's known there's a few different it's a residual haunting is what is classically known as,
Hmm.
and different parapsychologists will attribute it to stone tape theory or other ideas of I like physics. Why are we seeing this man? I had when I was in college, there was a ghost living in my apartment that did something similar. She walked through the living room at the exact same time every single night.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And
She ever
why?
talk
I
to
don't
you?
know.
No.
Hmm?
Ever
She didn't
talk to
say
you?
anything.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like Anne Boleyn going through the Tower of London is another famous residual haunting
Mm-hmm.
right before she was executed. So that could be what it is. And, but
So,
also it's, hmm?
no, I was just gonna say, do you think it has to be a tragic event to cause a ghost to show up
No,
in a repetitive thing like that?
no, because like a guy getting something to eat and just showing up as an entire scene, basically.
Yeah.
This was something they did. It may have brought comfort to them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hauntings are tragic, but a lot of hauntings, especially the more common ones, are comforting.
Yeah.
And it's
Hmm.
not scary to see ghosts. It's usually a comforting thing.
Yeah.
So, and it's most likely going to be your family members.
Yeah.
Well, it makes me think that there is, like, when you talk about physics and like Wi-Fi, for example,
Hmm.
and how I almost think it's somewhat analogous. Like, it's not implausible that there's some way to record some sort of action. There's some sort of material that records some sort of action.
I think we call them video recorders.
Exactly. But what I mean
Sorry.
is apparently something that's might even be common in nature.
That was not a ghost, that was my footrest again.
I mean,
Um,
even thinking about, I mean, this is a very inelegant way, but with Mount Vesuvius and all the people caught in the ash.
in Pompeii.
Yes, I mean, maybe there is some way that maybe there's something in a way that's similar that catches these residual hauntings.
Yeah. And this is why I say psychologists or physicists are gonna figure this out because
Mhm.
there's a lot more science involved, and we're just my job as an anthropologist is just collecting all these experiences, saying we're seeing patterns in these experiences, now what may be causing them?
Right.
And
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
so that's a two-bottle question, as James would say.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, a two-bottle topic. Wonder if we could get a physicist from UC to ever on to talk about that.
Your door's opening and there's a tail wagging. This is another wild animal episode. I saw an eyeball above your shoulder.
There is a dog. Actually, there are two. Hi,
Oh.
But it
puppy.
Oh.
was funny because there was an eyeball suddenly above your
That
shoulder.
was Yeti. That's how tall he is.
Wow.
He's 2.5 feet off the ground. That eyeball. Um. Yeah.
That's great.
Hi.
All of our pets are
Yeah.
making an appearance today.
I know,
Yeah.
this is the wild animal episode. We
Yeah.
Yes,
had
this
another
is.
one of those too, when Bob was like showing his rear end in front of the camera.
I like how you said your door is opening.
Well, I saw this eyeball and I thought it was really funny. So if you're
It
watching on
was.
YouTube,
And you can hear the dog collars, and also
mhm.
there's a bunch of oh no, they're not finches, starlings that are in the mulberry tree above my house. So if you hear a bunch of fluttered birds, that's what they are. Like flustered, not fluttered, fluttered birds. Yeah, they were chatting before we started recording. We're
Oh,
recording in the middle of the day, which is a little odd for us.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's a little bit different, but because of all the travel
yeah,
this week, we were
yeah,
just had to kind of move things around.
Well,
yes. Well,
my
thank
aunt is
you.
My
He
unemployment makes me available.
yeah. We'll get you a job somewhere, Jen.
Yeah.
Chewy agrees. So thank you, B, again for sending us your story. It was fantastic. Send us more. I love hearing these stories.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating how ubiquitous it is, and
Yeah.
yet how many people say what B said, that no, like when you talk about this, a lot of times it's very taboo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a sacred is a good word for it.
Yeah.
The
Mhm.
it's a really profound um personal experience when it happens and not everybody
Mhm.
wants to share them.
Right.
Mhm.
And that is fine. If you don't want to share it, that's also great. It's because it matters to you in your heart.
Right.
That's what's
Mhm.
important. But
Well,
I
yeah, I think
appreciate it so much when people share
Yeah.
experiences.
it's probably a mixture of being afraid of being ridiculed for something that is so important to them, and also there is the personal aspect of it, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of feelings that come up when you see relatives like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I talk to invisible people in dark rooms. Nothing sounds bananas to me. Please send in your stories. So, with that, we have another story from
Yes,
Kay.
yes, and she was actually cat sitting at our house,
Oh, thank you, Kay.
and I remember when this happened actually, because she actually texted us and said there were footsteps upstairs in your house, and she was afraid to go to the house after that by herself. And there was no one there. And this is another story where you probably have heard of many of these. Well, actually, similar to Misha's story, who we had a couple weeks ago, where they were staying at the uh, Airbnb where there was footsteps. Is that a common occurrence when you hear?
Chewy says yes. Um, sorry about the dog tags. Yeah, footsteps, probably one of the most classic reported, most often reported phenomena that people will note, especially when they're alone, when there are footsteps belonging to no one in the house. And especially with cats just being in the house, they're generally not, especially your cats, are not heavy enough to make that sound. My dogs, on the other hand, if they're walking on a different floor, they sound like people because they're heavy
Yeah.
enough to cause that kind of sound.
Mhm.
Another thing that can cause these sounds, especially when you're in large, old reformatories or the asylums, are pigeons. If they're
Really?
walking on the beams above you, they sound like footsteps walking behind you. It's just the
Huh.
Wow.
way the acoustics is Mansfield Reformatory is infamous for this, to the
Mm.
point where most of the time, unless you're in the hole, you can't really attribute footsteps to being paranormal because it's probably a pigeon.
Mhm.
Huh.
So, yeah, just to keep in mind your environment. But footsteps walking up and down stairs, the creaking of stairs is really common. I mean, think about how many traditional old ghost stories from the 1800s talk about that, like the brown
Mhm.
lady, um, the gray lady, Anne Boleyn again. Like that's really common. And I think the parents reported hearing footsteps going through the Conjuring house in Rhode Island. It's just everywhere. I've heard phantom footsteps as well before in my old house in Rhode Island again. I love Rhode Island. It's so haunted. But yeah, it's not necessarily scary. It's always kind of this paced out purposeful thing. The James Thurber house that James Willis just investigated earlier this month also is another famous case of footsteps. So,
So I have a story that I can add to that. Not a ghost story, but when I moved into my new place, I have carpet. And so I can't really hear my cats coming up on me anymore.
yeah.
But it's little Miss Clover who likes to run and chase me. One time I was walking to go up the stairs and all I heard were little footsteps, right? And then I stopped and then they stopped and I turned around. Nothing was there. I'm like, "Oh, cat, no,
Ooh,
that's creepy. Stop that."
I love that.
Oh my gosh, she loves to do it, and it's she's stalking me.
Mhm.
But the first time she did, I got super goosebumpy.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oop, and there goes a tail.
Well, cats, I mean, they like to stalk things, and they're
Mhm.
they're playing a game.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's I mean, I don't know if they could take down a whole human. They think they can.
They could take down all your
She
stuff on your
tries.
desk.
Yeah, they could take down
She
everything
tries.
on your desk. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Like
Uh-huh.
just
Uh-huh.
happened.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and then in a segue,
Mhm.
uh, Kay also saw something at Cincinnati State. She was going to school there, and she saw shadow people.
Oh.
She says I was in a community classroom and computer lab at Cincinnati State. I kept seeing movement at one of the computer stations out of the corner of my eye. My friend, who is sensitive, nudged me and said, "You see him, don't you?" I was startled. "Yes," I said. There was a shadowy figure slouched in a chair by the computer. It seemed to mean no harm. She
Oh,
said it seemed very
wow.
benign, but there was definitely a shadow person there, and she and her friend both saw it.
Oh, man, I have so many questions.
Yeah.
1, was it the main campus? 2, was
Yes, I
what
think it
time of
was.
day and where in the campus were you?
I can get those questions answered, actually.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Cincinnati State's main campus, which is the one I believe in Clifton, used to be
Hmm.
a high school.
Oh, really?
Mm.
Yes. So I can definitely believe that there is some residual stuff happening around. But yeah, yeah, it's interesting campus to go through because it's you have this old high school with the old subway tile and everything, and then they have brand new campus buildings that are shiny and new and everything. So it's
Hmm.
kind of a trip going through there.
I had no idea that it had that history.
Yeah.
Me
I
neither.
forget which high school it was. I'm sure somebody will comment, but
So yeah,
um
somebody will probably give that. But
yeah.
yes, I will ask exactly where that was. Maybe that's
Yeah.
something we could even pinpoint later.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be interested in knowing, but if you're seeing it in the middle of the day, I love or even just like when you know you're going to be awake normally because that is
Hmm.
seeing a shadow person full bodied next to you. That's amazing. And
Hmm.
especially when you know you're awake and going to be for several more hours. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, do you think people often see them and just don't think about it because your brain doesn't take in everything?
Right. And that could be um I mean shadow people are commonly seen in dark places or around dusk and dawn, so your eyes can be playing things with you. People also see them or encounter them at the end of their beds while they're waking up or falling asleep, which
Mm.
science has said, yeah, that's your brain doing the hippocampic and hippopompic states, which I think we've talked about in an earlier
Yeah,
episode.
probably.
But that's why I love these stories when people say, I saw a full bodied shadow person in the middle of my day because you're not in any of those states. You're active,
Hmm.
your brain is going on. And yes, you use 100% of your brain, not just 10%. And it's working. And that's
Mm.
why I love stories when it's in the middle of the day because I remember running when I still did um, Paranormal View and the Urban Legends Detective, which is my previous projects. I did a study asking how many times people saw ghosts during the day versus at night, and it was a 50-50 draw out
Really?
of
Hmm.
like 200
Wow.
sample responses.
Which supports my desire for ghost hunts not to be in the dark anymore.
They really
Mm.
shouldn't be in the dark. It's
Because I will
safer.
hurt myself one of these days and fall down a flight of steps, and that would
Yeah.
be bad.
Yeah, it's so much safer. And I've seen shadow people in the middle of the day too. If a
Hmm.
place is going to be haunted, it will be haunted at noon, just like it'll be haunted at midnight. So, yeah. But
Hmm.
Let's do a road trip down to Waverly and do a day thing,
yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind that.
or to Mansfield. Do
Yeah.
one of their tours.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We
That'd be
definitely
fun.
should.
There are
We
just
definitely
as
should.
many ghost experiences happening on their tours as their ghost hunts,
Mhm.
and
Hmm.
less bats. Yes. So,
Mm.
Well,
That's
on that
funny.
note, I
yeah,
think
that is everyone. So
that
thank
is a lot
you.
of stuff. That's a lot of
Yes.
stuff. And if you've had an experience like this, let us know what's happened.
Yes,
Please
you know
do.
we're dying to hear from you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you everyone who submitted stories. We're always ready to accept more at our hometown hauntedmail@gmail.com account. And also, you can write reviews and write comments under YouTube. Christina and I, will see them, and we will just put them in our big archive and read them on a future episode of the Hometown Haunts podcast, hosted by myself, Kat Kloko, Christina Wald, and Jen Kohler. So, for the three of us, to you, good night and stay spooky. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.